All right, so now that we have seen how we can read properties from the application.properties file, let's try to duplicate these properties file as per the environments that exist in a typical project, right? So normally we would have a development team, right, who's constantly creating features, writing code for it, and then checking it to Git, right? And typically that will get deployed. Those changes will get deployed onto a dev environment, right? And once the dev team is done with the changes, they will push those changes or deploy those changes to a staging or a testing environment, right? And then it might go upwards towards pre-prod or performance environment before it goes into the prod, right? So what we typically do is we duplicate these application.properties files as per the environment, because you would typically be connecting to a different database, right? Sometimes you might even want to have certain property values to be different per environment, right? So typically how we do it is we will duplicate these properties files. So what I'm going to do is I'm copying the application.properties and I'm pasting it in the same location. So it's going to ask me that should we copy, and what I'll do is I'll just change and I'll append a dev at the end of its name, right? So now it's application hyphen dev dot properties file. Remember, I have not deleted the application properties file. I've just created a new one here, right? And what I'll do is I'll just repeat this process once again, right? And I'll create another one and I'll call it hyphen test.properties file, right? So the first, I did not touch the first word application. I left it as it is. And then I just put a hyphen and then a test.properties file, right? So I'll just create this as well. Now, all these property files actually have the same value uh, called hello world dev, right? This is the value for this particular property. Now, since we are in the test, I'll just update this message to call it test, right? And dev already has that value. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this message from here because I don't want this message to be here because it's already there in the environment, should I say environment specific properties file, right? So in the application properties file, I'll just tell Spring which is the environment that I want to test on, right? So I will say spring dot profiles dot active equal to dev, right? So this dev, mind you, is very similar. In fact, it's the same after the hyphen in the dot properties, if you see. So I had intentionally created this property file as application hyphen dev dot properties file because I wanted to put this dev value as the active profile, right? So I'm sure you are able to get this concept of profiles, right? How Spring Boot manages profiles. It basically, from a properties files point of view, whatever is marked as active profile, Spring Boot will look for that particular properties file and it will inject the values of all the configurations from that properties file only, right? I hope that is clear. So we'll just quickly test that part as well to see if it is actually picking the values from the properties file that we wanted to pick the values from, right? So the application is now started. So okay, we may not be able to, let me just hit it. Okay, the value is same, which doesn't prove the point. So what I'll do is I'll now change it to test, right? And I'll restart this, right? So the application is restarted. Let me go back to the browser and hit it once again. And as you can see, now it is picking the values from the test application test.properties. So since I changed this to test, it has now gone and picked the configuration values from this particular properties file, right? So this is all the auto configuration that Spring Boot does, right? It is looking for this name appended to the properties file and it is picking all the configurations by itself. So I don't have to specifically mention which property file to read the values from, right? So this is being translated from the active profiles.